Yeah, really quickly, I wanted to go back and address your previous question because I like to get on a roll and say all my stuff here. But the reason they wanted to rewrite the Old Testament of the Bible was because Elizabeth Cady Stanton said right in the foreword to the Women's Bible that the only thing standing between us and real women's liberation is traditional Christianity. And it's so influential that we can't get rid of it. We just have to co-opt it and turn it into something completely unrecognizable from what it is now. And that was the impetus. So she got a bunch of occultists, theosophists, atheists, even people who were into some witchcraft and things like that to help her rewrite the Bible. You can still find it on Amazon today. Unbelievably, it's been in print for like 140 years. So that's that. And then the CIA, very interestingly, when second wave really got going, when they really made the push to really get women out of the home after World War II and keep them in factories, get them out into the workforce. This was the same time, right, that the OSS became the CIA, and they were really looking into a lot of things about mind control and how to influence public opinion. Things like MK Ultra, which started in 1953. I've done a ton of research and work on that. This was kind of part and parcel of that. It was part of both Operation Mockingbird and the Congress for Cultural Freedom, which was kind of like a Cold War propaganda effort by the CIA to influence people's perceptions of Soviet communists, as well as Americanism, and spreading that throughout the world and what that was supposed to look like. So they did things like they funded Playboy magazine in the 60s, the CIA did. They recruited Gloria Steinem out of Smith College, sent her to India, made her part of the Congress for Cultural Freedom, and had her spread messages of women's liberation in Eastern Europe and India before they brought her back here to the States, and began Ms. Magazine with her as like the lead editor and kind of the face of it. Because for the time, Gloria Steinem was kind of considered attractive as far as the feminists went, because the other people you had to choose from would have been like Betty Friedan or Simone de Beauvoir, who were not lookers, were a little off-putting, were not people who the American public would look at and want to listen to. But Gloria Steinem was like this kind of fashion savvy kind of woman, somewhat attractive. She looked like the face of the new woman in the 60s counterculture. So they gave her a bunch of money, started Ms. Magazine, and you can see the very first cover of Ms. Magazine has a picture of the Hindu goddess Kali on the front of it. And you're thinking, why in the 1970s, if you're trying to sell a magazine about feminism to suburban housewives, would you pick a blue-skinned Hindu goddess with like 8 arms and she has like severed men's heads in a necklace that she wears, and she has severed men's arms around her waist on her belt, and she's always got blood dripping from her mouth and stuff. Very horrifying, right? Why would they pick this if they're trying to get suburban American women into feminism? Well, it's because Kali has been an icon of feminism from ancient times, where she's actually responsible for one of the most murderous cults. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. There was a cult she had. The modern word thug actually comes from the word thuggies, which were a cult dedicated to Kali that murdered only men and sacrificed men to her because she's a bloodthirsty goddess who's supposed to symbolize like the vengeful, wrathful, destructive feminine nature. And that's who they put on the very first cover of the first mainstream feminist magazine, which was funded by the CIA. It's totally nuts. People would never think that that's true, but it's mainstream knowledge. You can go to cia.gov and read all about it if you want to, or you can read about it in my book. So they started there and then just kind of continued to push it as part of this culture creation that the CIA was involved in at that time.
It's absolutely incredible. And it feels like the United States was a different country before the 1920s, before we moved on and sold out our country to the feds and began the downward spiral of what we see today, while at the same time growing economically through consistent warfare, proxy wars, the Cold War, World War II. I mean, these things, that the United States economy has been very strong the largest thing the world has ever seen in terms of global connectedness. But the fabric and the morality and the character of our country has eroded so much. And now I'm myself, come out of LA. I didn't even realize how much a lot of this stuff permeated society until I left that culture. Because even recently, I've thought about the same things. I thought, there's an unmarried, childless working girl. She shares my ideas. She probably could make a great asset. And it turns out you can take a feminist out of the culture, but you can't take the feminism out of the feminist. I mean, if their lives aren't living according to what they're preaching, then really, you see today we have, Women's Leadership Summit coming up, and we have no male leadership summits, no white male leadership summits. We have Black leadership summits. There's nothing for the white man, nothing for the straight man, nothing for the man. And that's at the center of it, before race, before, sexuality and everything. It's a neglect of the man, because you can kind of hit those other categories once you start there and you say, well, let's look at men and where they're at, and let's look at the wholeness of who they are. Why are we promoting woman leaders, Rachel? Like, why is that where our movement has gotten to? Is that's what we see as the way out of this? Let's promote women to take leadership roles. Like, is that a good idea?
I think it's a terrible idea, and this is where I get the most backlash. I do get I have some very dedicated fans, haters, if you will, out there who absolutely just despise me and think that I am like the worst thing that's ever happened. Probably because I am a careerless mother who, like, my older 3 children are now adults who are moved out and on their own. And my younger 2 who are still at home and homeschooled are older now. So I've got a little bit of time. And this is something that I've been researching and talking about for a long time, because 4 of my children are girls. And I started really thinking about my own life and my legacy and what I wanted to leave them. I thought of like writing a diary of all the things that I had learned, because like most women, when I was young, I was raised in the Go Girl 80s and 90s with like She-Ra and Oprah and Shania Twain and Madonna and all this stuff. And it was like always pushed on me. And I was in smart kid classes all the way through school. And it was like, you're going to have a career. You're going to have a career. And everything about my childhood was pushing me towards college and a career. And I turned 20 and had my first child, and I did not want to do that. I couldn't imagine how a career could be more important, how I could take my daughter and send her to some other woman who I'm going to pay half what I make to this other woman to do my job, which is raise my child, while I go work for a corporation that I pretend to care about. And I just kind of looked around and went, this is ridiculous. It's inefficient. It's heartbreaking. It's traumatizing to me. It's traumatizing to my infant daughter. And the women around me just kind of went, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it. This is how it is now. This is how it is now. And I knew something was wrong with that. And it was really just out of me having to defend my life choices to everyone around me, even conservatives, even Christians, right, who were telling me I needed to have a job. I needed to have my own money. I was going to regret it someday to depend on my husband to support the family. And what if he leaves me? And they fear-mongered me to death about not having a career. And I thought, we don't do that to career women. We don't fearmonger them to death about all the things that could go wrong if they don't like their career field, if they're not very good at it, if they have the average woman now holds $35,000 in college debt. 65% of all college debt in this country is held by women. And then we expect them to have children. That's insane. So I just felt like this was very backwards. It didn't make sense. And so I went and investigated and started doing research. I wrote the book. Really it was meant to be for my children. I didn't know if anyone would ever read it, but here we are now. So I'm on the internet talking about it. And surprisingly, some of the worst backlash I've gotten has been from the right. I had a staffer for Candace Owens just berating me on Twitter once about how I'm not out there increasing the GDP. I'm a bad American because I'm not contributing to economic growth. And, I'm being selfish by staying home and focusing on my own family when I should be out there helping Uncle Sam and things like this. And I thought, these people have been propagandized completely. None of that makes sense, right? So I think that that's what's happening on the right is they want this big tent, right? We're going to compromise everything, and we're going to tell everybody that you know, all of your personal choices and everything, all the morality, all the things that are essential to the foundation of traditional Christianity in America, we're just going to throw all of that away. And as long as we focus on the GDP and the economy and American dominance and foreign policy, everything will be fine. Meanwhile, domestic life here in the United States is basically hell world now. And it's because we destroyed the family. We took mothers and made them corporate cogs. We just threw away fatherhood. Like, who even cares about those guys? You know, you don't need a dad, and women don't need a man. And so children are being raised with mothers who are part-time nights and weekends moms, right? They mother around their career. The career is always first because you can't be late. You can't have too many absences or anything like that. So if you have to go to before school daycare and then you go to school for 7 hours and then you go to after school daycare and mommy sees you for maybe an hour or two, and then you go to dad's every other weekend, somehow this is acceptable. And we don't think this is going to make children insane and vulnerable. Things like childhood ADHD and anxiety and depression used to be extremely rare, and now they are common. Now it's like, what child doesn't have these conditions? And we have 25% of all adult American women on a psychiatric drug. We have 88% of all American women on birth control at some point in their lives. So we, in the span of 100 years, we've completely destroyed the entire foundation of morality and of Christianity, to the point that people are just leaving it all. People are just leaving the church and abandoning it. And just, so we've got a GOP that stands for nothing, because it's like, well, the women need careers. You had Trump pushing this with Ivanka all the time. This was my biggest criticism of him, was this: get moms to work, get moms to work. We have to pass bills and create funding so moms can work. And I was like, why? Why do you want moms to be at work? They already have a job, which is raising their children. And that is not something you can do part-time. And it's heartbreaking to me. So my whole purpose is to try to destroy that the same way that they destroyed the family and destroyed what motherhood used to be.
Before we go any further in the conversation, I got to talk to you about Pixatine, which are nicotine-infused toothpicks. Now, you guys know I love a good smoke every once in a while, but of course, many of you guys might smoke more than just once in a while, or you might have an addiction to a vape or something else. You know, there's restrictions on where you can smoke. You know, it's not great for your health, and maybe you've tried alternatives, but it's really hard to stop doing that. Now, there is an alternative to this that has no restrictions in planes, trains, and automobiles, comes in amazing flavors like winter fresh and cinnamon, as well as tobacco and other amazing flavors. They're small, they're portable, can be used literally basically anywhere, including a plane, train, or automobile. And that is the toothpicks from Pixatine.com/Elijah. Now, when you go to Pixatine.com/Elijah, that's Pixatine.com/ELIJAH, you get 10% off, 20% off, actually, even better, 20% off the entire store. It's even better. I forgot they have such a good deal for you guys. These give you that same nicotine buzz, and if you're 21 or older, you might find this is a better alternative. You don't have the smell, you don't have the smoke, you don't have the restrictions, you get the same buzz. It's a good product, and I know a lot of people have used these instead of doing other activities that could be harmful. I can't say that they can help you quit, but I can tell you I've had friends who have stopped smoking and used these instead. Those are my friends. That's their experience. Maybe you should try that, or you just want to try these as well because you're tired of the restrictions on smoking. Go to Pixatine.com/Elijah, Pixotine.com/ELIJAH. That's Pixatine.com/Elijah for 20% off all of these amazing products. Check it out.